Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Avid CNC live stream. Thank you so much for being here today. We're excited for this. Is going to be a really lovely stream. Please let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd also like to acknowledge the service members and first responders today to let you know we're thinking about you and that we appreciate you. So
That definitely.
thank you. Yeah, we also have a very special guest today. As you can all see, we have Jonathan Katz-Moses. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. How's it going over there?
Good. I don't know about special, but I'm definitely a guest. It's going good. We're in California, and luckily we don't have any fires where I am this year. We've had brutal last few years, a lot of fires. So I'm thinking about everybody, and I know what it's like. 2 years ago, was evacuated almost 20 times, and my house was hit by the mudslide. So I know how it is for people, and I'm really thinking about you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the West Coast definitely hit hard today. And we're thinking all about you as well. And, we're out here on the West Coast too. So thank you for everyone for your support and for checking in on us. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you have any questions for Jonathan throughout, please feel free to drop that in the chat and we'll be sure to get to it. Thank you everyone for letting us know where you're tuning in from. We already have Olivier from France, folks from all over. Thank you for joining. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump into it. So if you all haven't watched Jonathan's, let's do like a little introduction, talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you do. So Jonathan, you're a woodworker and an inventor, and you have a really wonderful channel that I religiously watch and really appreciate. And I love to see all of the different kinds of things that you invent and design, and you're always trying to solve these problems. And I also really appreciate the way you approach, your days of making, no zero days. That really speaks to me and the kind of life that I like to live. So it feels like inspirational, part motivational, and then also really educational in so many different layers, So can you tell us a little bit about what you do and, what really drives you to get in the shop every day?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you said, I'm an inventor and a woodworker. I think first and foremost, I'm a teacher. I love to teach, and being able to share what I've learned over the years on my YouTube channel is something I love to do. But I also like to come up with great solutions to problems, and that's where a lot of my products have come from. And I think as far as like what motivates me to get in the shop every day, it's just the love of creating. It doesn't feel like I have a job because every day I show up and I get to build things and play on the computer and shoot video. So it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, not only just a teacher, Jonathan, I think you're also a leader. And, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing in leading our maker community. And specifically, when we talk about the Katz-Moses Disabled Woodworker Fund and what you're doing there.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, the coolest thing, we just got approved for our 501c3, which means I can now issue tax deductible receipts and operate as a California nonprofit, as a federal and California nonprofit. And it's a big hurdle because that's something that is really hard to get and it's really hard to do. And so we've been working on getting that approved since February. And we finally just got our letter about 2 weeks ago, I think, and it's really exciting. And what we're doing is I have found through my journey that woodworking is one of those things, making things in general, is one of those things that is very cathartic for people with PTSD, with disabilities, people who may be on permanent disability and can't work. They find that woodworking and making things gives them a ton of joy. But also what is very often combined with having a disability, whether it's mental or physical, is a lack of income. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times people have this great thing that can really help them, but they don't have resources to be able to continue to do it at a scale, at a pace in which they are also growing and learning. And so what I want to do is be able to provide people with tools and help and sort of all the resources that they need to continue to grow their passion and potentially turn it into something that may be income generating for them, or more importantly, just therapeutic. And so We've been working really hard. We've helped a lot of people already, and really, I feel like we're really in our infancy. And so to be able to grow and grow with such a supportive community, all the people that watch my channel have been so helpful. In fact, somebody just donated $5,000 the day that we got our 501c3.
Wow.
They wrote me and said, "Hey, how do I donate?" And I said, well, it was like amazing. And, I'm getting choked up thinking about it. It's great how people in this community step up. The maker community is one of the nicest communities I've ever been a part of, and supportive communities. And so it's been incredible. And our mission is just to help people. And we're doing a lot of that. And I look forward to what we're going to be able to do next year as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I can't thank you enough for taking the reins and leading some of these efforts. As someone
Thank you.
who has a family member who, I can't agree more about the therapeutic and the joy aspect of, creating and making in all communities. So thanks for having that up.
Thank you so much. It's been really, really fun. And, I wear a lot of hats. I don't sleep very much. We just started another business called Katz-Moses Watches. We're starting a watch-based YouTube channel, which is really exciting. So we've been building the set for that and doing a lot of things. But nothing gives me greater pleasure than be able to give back and to be able to help people. I think that's something I've always been really excited about. And it's fun to be in a position where I can organize people to do some good. And when we do well, we get to do good. And that's really an exciting thing about where we're at right now.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Congratulations on the 501c status. That's a big deal. And, it is, I love when, you work in your passion, you get to do that every day and then use that success there to bring it to more people and to be able to share that with communities that haven't had traditionally had access to those resources and those skill sets and learning those things. And I think that is something we need to do on a daily basis everywhere, and in many different types of practices, and there's so many different facets of it and making sure that it's more accessible. I think that's why CNC is such an interesting thing in terms of part of our mission of accessibility is, for example, Izzy Swan, he's been in and out of a chair, and we've worked through trying to create ideas about how to make the CNC more accessible for folks who are in chairs and to lower the leg kit. Okay, maybe we need to offer a lower leg kit or something like that in order to make it a little bit more accessible. Also, if you don't necessarily have the same hand strength or something like that, but you can still work on a computer or program something that can making things more accessible in different ways. So I think digital fabrication will also help with that in the next era of the maker world and fabrication, and seeing how that continues to develop.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've found, in the last 6-7 months as we've been doing the Disabled Woodworkers Fund is that one of the biggest problems that people have is lifting devices. So one of the things you might want to think about with your CNC is having an optional lift table or material feeder or something that they can, attach to the ceiling that is like a chain hoist or things like that, and that you build maybe a split spoils board so that the straps could be taken off the piece of wood. But lifting and mobility seems to be the biggest need and lifting, work holding, and mobility is the biggest issue with our woodworkers with disabilities. And so those are the things we've really been working on. We've been actually designing some products that I think will be helpful to woodworkers. But I think CNC is like an obvious go-to, right? Because it's like they can design something on the computer and they're able to do things that maybe would be really hard. Like I couldn't imagine somebody in a wheelchair manhandling a 4x8 sheet of plywood onto a table saw. It's just not easy to do.
Or even a small person, like I have a hard time lifting 4x8 sheets 3/4 inch, by myself. So definitely that's something that I think many people benefit from, and not just a small sliver of our community. We have a lot of folks who can benefit from all of these inventions and make it more of an inclusive space. So it sounds like we have a lot of ideas to brainstorm and workshop that really kind of gets my gears going. I'm really excited to hear more about that and figure out how we can continue to help develop our mission and continue to work. Continue. That's funny. Work work towards achieving that more and more every day, and that we're here. We show up. We make things and keep teaching making. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. Izzy is a very close friend of mine. We talk about, once or twice a
Yeah.
week. And the things he's doing for mobility, and like his new table saw in-feed table is just absolutely
It's awesome,
incredible. And I really respect what Izzy's doing. He's one of my favorite. He's been an idol of mine for the entirety of my making journey. That is for sure.
Yeah, me too. I
Well,
love hearing all of his diversity of the things that he is interested in too. Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
oh, I was just going to say, yeah, and he's very focused on getting things done, and I feel like you two are parallel on that. Where, not to say that you don't do refinement and high detailed stuff, but you guys all also push forward and get things done, which is phenomenal. So,
Yeah.
Speaking of CNCs and getting things done, what CNCs you got in the shop right now, Jonathan? How are you leveraging digital fabrication to get things done?
Oh man, I feel like CNC has become the center of my shop. In fact, just this morning, I have to ship a crate to this woodworker named Vlad. We released that video, a mallet for Vlad, and we're sending this massive care package to him. He's got Apert syndrome, which means your bones don't unfuse in utero. So he's had like 300 surgeries in his life. He's this 20-year-old kid who just is the happiest, hardest working guy. He's a woodworker, and we're sending this massive care package. And so I needed to make a crate, and I knew what size I wanted it. So I went into Fusion. It took me 4 minutes. I modeled all the pieces. I put a sheet of 4x8 plywood onto the CNC, and I had it cut out about 10 minutes later. And that's just one example of things that we do on the fly here on my 5x10 Avid machine. But a lot of what we do with our CNC is production work. So we make our dovetail alignment boards on there. We have a couple other products I don't want to mention yet because they're still in development. We do slab flattening. That's hard to say.
Say it 5 times fast.
Yeah. Well, I'll continue to do that, Sam. We flatten slabs. We make templates. We do all sorts of things that would be difficult to do. I think one of the things a CNC really does that is pretty cool is it eliminates the need for things like belt sanders and disc sanders, stationary tools, not the handheld versions, because suddenly you get into these complex curves and it no longer makes sense to try and cut them out by hand. There's no reason to try and make parts that aren't equal to each other. And so making templates is one of the most valuable things that a CNC can do, whether it's a laser or a router spindle. We have 2 lasers in the shop. We have a 5x10 laser, which is massive.
Yeah.
How many watts is that one?
270.
Nice.
Wow.
And I believe it is the largest laser in Southern California. I have not found somebody who has a bigger one than I have.
Okay, guys, that's a challenge. Go find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, if you want to hear a funny coronavirus related story, the laser was made in Wuhan, China. And I ordered it October of last year, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And it took, a few months to make. And it was ready to ship January 20th or something like that. And then Chinese New Year was January 23rd. And then everybody knows the world changed January 25th or something like that. Yeah. And so I didn't get it shipped out of the country by the start of Chinese New Year, and then ended up having to wait another 4 months before it left because obviously everything was in lockdown. But it came in and we were so scared of it that we left it on our loading dock for a week. And we just didn't want to open it. Although, that's not how virus is transferred. But that was the story of the laser that took 7 months to get to me because of the virus.
Worth the wait, I'm sure.
It has been incredibly useful. I mean, it just the company that made it is one of the biggest and best laser manufacturers in the world. They make very high quality stuff. And this machine is full of new tech. It's really cool. It'll cut 3mm steel. So we're actually looking into, here's a product I'll show you because I didn't invent it, but we're going to start carrying these. This is a keychain. It's a coronavirus-based keychain. So it's a no-touch keychain. It opens doors, it closes doors. It has a pry bar on it. It has a can opener, a bottle opener. And it's made from brass, which is antimicrobial. Right. So brass is self-cleaning. So we're bringing these in. We're looking to cut them in the laser. But one of my manufacturers started making these, and they gave me a great price on them. So I'm going to be able to bring them in the store, and I think we're going to start including them with any order over $50. So, you know, they're something I want people to be safe and healthy. So we're going to be able to start giving them away, or we'll sell them as well. I think they're like $10 on Amazon. I think I'm going to sell them for $5 on my website. But it's something that, you know, these kind of things can be made on a CNC, and it shows the value of digital manufacturing because, you know, you can put them on a sheet of brass and cut them out on your router spindle, or you could do it on laser. Probably a fiber laser would do that. But it's something where you can do 1 million of these, where it used to be that you'd have to do it, you know, a machinist would do them, and they do them one at a time. And now with digital fabrication, I think it's just really easy for my manufacturer to make them, and it's really easy for me to bring them in. And it's something we can do quickly. I just ordered them the other day, and they're going to be here in 15, 20 days. And it's a really neat thing that we're going to be able to share with other woodworkers and be able to do it at a super cost-effective way.
Yeah, I definitely think also having machines in your shop, even if you're not going to be manufacturing the run of 10,000 of them, you know, you can still prototype them in your shop and refine it down before you have even a sample made, right? So that's a really important thing when you're inventing.
Right. And so I'll give you an example of one right now. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'm developing with somebody else. I don't want to give away their idea right now, but they had an idea for something, which is right here. If you can guess what it is in the comments, I'll tell you. But it's something where she sent me the dimensions. I 3D printed it on my 3D printer, which is literally on my desk. We drew it in Fusion. We drew it in about 10 minutes over the phone. I had it printed prototype 2 hours later, and I mailed it off to her to start playing with. And it's something that we're looking into developing. But it is so easy to take an idea now, create it. You can create a prototype. So one of the hardest things about creating something is, does my idea work? And it used to be that you had to send it, you know, CAD files out to a manufacturer, and then they would only do a minimum run of 300 of them. And that was the lowest quantity they would do machine setup for. Then you'd get that back and you'd play with it and you'd find ways that it didn't work or it could be improved. And then you'd have to do it again. And you're talking tens of thousands of dollars in development costs. And now for $0, we've got a completed product to play with. And it's not, obviously, you know, you wouldn't want to use PLA as a finished product with tools, but it definitely gives us an idea of what works and what doesn't work. And then when we're ready to produce it, we can iron out all the kinks. And what's great about this is we did find some problems with it, which is it didn't work at a certain size. And we've since fixed that in the CAD model. We've 3D printed some new ones, and we're playing with those. But it's free. And I mean, obviously, you got the cost of filament and the printer, but otherwise, it's like I have so many products on my desk right now that never came to fruition, but we started. And they didn't work, and that's okay. And we didn't waste anything but a couple hours of our time to do it. So additive and deductive manufacturing in the home shop is really doable, and it's not expensive. You know, I have one of the more expensive 3D printers you could buy because we do so much prototyping. And it was $1,500, and it prints very fast, and it can print massive models. You can print full-size helmets and things like that. But
what kind of
you can
printer
get
is it?
It's a X-Max. and it prints high heat or low heat filaments.
Yeah.
So I can do carbon fiber and plastic and do all sorts of things. But it's like, I'll show you how big this is how big it can go. This is a print we stopped because it was like a 70-hour print. We were going to run out of filament. But it'll do, this is a full-size human skull. Wow. And this was going to be a Halloween decoration, but then I realized how hard it was to print something this big and how long it takes. But it's what's available to the average consumer now is so valuable and so neat that it's just becoming, companies like yours can really help drive innovation from the masses, not just big companies with large R&D departments.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say it's so valuable and so vast, because I couldn't agree more. But that vastness can make it sometimes intimidating to know where to start, or which arena to kind of jump into. And I know this is kind of similar with all woodworking tools, right? We have a lot of options, and where do we start? How do we progress through those options? And so I know you've had a lot of different machines and tools through your shop. And what have you learned today, through that experience of kind of different tools and different types of manufacturing?
So I think when you think about getting something done, like Corey, you always like to say, there's additive and deductive manufacturing, and that applies to anything. Woodworking tools, table saw is a deductive machine. A jointer is a deductive machine. And the thing to know, especially if you're watching this live stream and you're just getting started, is that you don't need everything in the world to get stuff done. There are guys, the Four Eyes Furniture makes some of the most beautiful modern furniture I've ever seen, and those guys use like 3 tools. They don't use tons of different types of machines and tools. And when I think about my woodworking, it's really, there's only like 3 or 4 tools I use regularly, which is a router, a table saw, and a bandsaw. And of course, planers, but you can buy lumber to get around that. But when it comes to deductive manufacturing, you don't need all the fancy gizmos to make prototypes. You don't need the fancy 3D printer to make something. You can make a rough prototype, even if you have to carve it out of wood, and it can get you to a place where, like, okay, now I have an idea and I found that it works. So then I'm going to go online. You can upload a CAD model there's all these like 3D printing sites where you can upload a model and they'll print it and send it to you, and it's cheap. And you can go that route. So you don't have to buy the fancy machine to invent something or create a new jig or fixture. And you can get a long way down the manufacturing path without spending a lot of money. And I think that's what I always try and impart on people in these streams is when it gets expensive is when you go to actually manufacture the product. And that's just part of the game. You got to spend money to make money, right? So if you have a product you want to bring to market, you got to buy the materials and have somebody make it. But there's lots of ways to get around that. My business was started, the dovetail jig I made by hand in my shop. The prototypes for the stop block, for the apron, those were all made by hand by me in my shop. And there are ways to do that yourself for a long time before you need to manufacture in mass. A lot of times you can really hone your product by just making a few of them and giving them out to other people or selling them for what it costs to make you. And then you start to get feedback and you start to have other people, other minds play with it. And I think that's one of the most valuable things is I read a great post by Arnold Schwarzenegger the other day on Reddit. And I know it's a funny guy to quote, but he's one of the most motivating people I've ever met and one of the key things that he always tries to tell people is that he is not a self-made man. Self-made man implies that he did it himself. And in reality, there were people supporting him and around him and helping him all along. And that's one of the most important parts about manufacturing and developing things is to create things that other people can give you feedback on. That is all of the things that I've ever brought to market were improved by other people. In fact, the funniest part is the apron. I mentioned the apron that I released a couple months ago in an Instagram story like 2 months prior. And I said, oh, I've made this replica of my apron. We're going to bring it to market. And someone wrote, is it going to have a left-handed version? And I was like, why didn't I think about that? Of course it's going to be. And the left-handed people are 10% of the population, but I've sold 20% left-handed aprons because it's the first time anybody built one catered to a left-handed person.
Yeah.
And that was just from an Instagram comment. Things like the stop block where there's these V grooves in it that where it fits together. Originally, those were 90-degree channels. And when we went to manufacturing, it's extruded aluminum, and extruded aluminum has very large tolerances, like plus or minus 0.07. And if you say plus or minus 0.07 on each side, that's plus or minus 0.14. That's really big in manufacturing. And so I realized that if we had one tolerance on the negative and one on the plus, that the pieces wouldn't mate and they wouldn't fit together. And someone was like, oh, why don't you just make them V grooves, and no matter how off they are, they'll always sit in each other. I was like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. And I didn't think of that myself. And so when you talk about manufacturing the home shot, it's important to get things in people's hands and get feedback. And that's how you really develop something that is going to be accepted in mass by your target demographic.
Yeah. And
I think, go ahead, Sam.
You can continue to develop and improve upon your previous designs. I think you've gone on to release the second version of the stop block recently, right?
Yeah, that was an improvement in the finish. The finish, it was like a B plus. Extruded aluminum doesn't take anodizing very well, and so the finish was kind of rustic at times. And so we went to a different matte finish, and it's not only increased the friction between the two parts so that they even were less likely to move, but it increased the overall appearance. And so it's been a nice improvement. It's not, the difference between a gasoline engine and an electric engine by any means, but it certainly was a big improvement. Not big, it was an improvement. It increased the appearance and functionality of it a little bit, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely important for fabricators and makers in general to always be open to iterations, and I think I personally get a lot of joy out of that. The translations of each product being developed, and even to see the way our machines, as Corey always says, they evolve. And I love to get to see how they change and transform, and we tweak little things to big things, and getting to see each, no matter how big or small those releases are, it's always really satisfying to me. So I just want to acknowledge some of the comments here. If you all have any questions, please feel free to drop that in the chat for us. Jonathan would be more than happy to answer any of your questions about woodworking, inventing, business development, and that sort of thing. I want to say hi, Paul. Thanks for joining, everyone. Thanks who's been tuning in here. Corey, did you have a question next? Or?
Well, the iteration, I think, there's the inventor side of the idea, but the iteration is part of the engineering side, right? How can we improve? How can we provide additional value? And I think, Jonathan, when I look at your products, not just the quality of the product, but the price points you hit with those products, I see someone who is very focused on a value proposition where you can say, hey, these products are worth it. And so I guess, what are some of the things or the red flags that you see in a good way when you're thinking about inventing something or solving a problem for that value proposition aspect of it?
First of all, I just want to say hi to Izzy Swan, my boy. I mentioned you earlier, bud. He's in the chat. When I look at value, all my products are inexpensive because people mark their stuff up too much. Like I really think that woodworking should be accessible to all, and so I'd rather make a couple bucks off lots of people than a lot of bucks off a few people. I want my product to get in as many hands as possible. And so when I look at manufacturing, when I look at what are the telltale signs of something that is going to be valuable, it's something that I can produce at a low enough price that I can, one, compete with other people, but not only that, like knock them out of the park. You look at my apron. My apron is the same price as aprons on Amazon or elsewhere that are half the value. And that's not because it didn't cost me less. It was just because there's no reason for me to mark it up 7 times. Because I know what I paid for it, and I know that other people probably paid less because it doesn't have custom leather pieces on it. And, I don't need to make 700% markup. And so I look for things that can get down in a price range that I can afford to bring them to market. And it's very quickly apparent when you begin that process if something is going to work. If I design something and it's just going to be so expensive that I can't do it, then that becomes apparent pretty quickly. And so when you look at something, you start with the physical product and you say, what is the design? And then I go, okay, let's look at what types of materials can I make this out of? Mm-hmm. And the dovetail jig is a great example of that. We were making out of wood. We were going to go to machined aluminum. But I have a really good friend who invented the modern skateboard wheel. And he was like, why don't you make it out of urethane? We can make it out of the same material that pool balls are made out of. It'll be indestructible. I mean, anybody who's dropped a pool ball knows that you can't break a pool ball. And so we started playing around with it, and it turned out that the clear portion of it was a big hit with people. They are absolutely indestructible, but they're also inexpensive to make. Machined aluminum would be 3 or 4 times the cost. Yeah. And I'd have to charge $60 for one of these as opposed to, the $40 that we're charging now, which is really incredible.
Yeah. So just to hit it right on the head there. So the things on your desk, you usually not just design, but you get to some type of physical element to then kind of prove out, like, does this have a value proposition where I can manufacture it for a cost that people will say, hey, that's a great deal, right? You got to you can't just do all that on paper. Sometimes you got to prototype and make the physical thing and really get it in your hands and other people's hands to determine, is there a value proposition here? Am I getting that right?
Yes, absolutely. So, one of the things that's the hardest part about getting into product development is developing relationships with manufacturers. People are always reaching out to manufacturers, and they are always working with them. And it's important to develop relationships. And so to get started, the way you find what something will cost is you need to send it out for pricing. And so that really entails a good CAD model. That's really the most important part. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do it on your own, it's really easy to go on Fiverr.com or one of those, gig workplace type websites that organize gig workers. You can get somebody who's knowledgeable in Fusion 360 or SolidWorks, and they can draw your product for you, and then you can send that out for pricing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I'll get feedback from manufacturers. It's like, hey, these tolerances are too tight. Have you thought about doing it this way? Or, excuse me. How about we look at this material instead of the one that you've called out here? And so getting pricing is free. Anybody will do it. You'll find out the minimum order requirements. Those are a big deal. When you think about extruded aluminum, for example, there's only 4 hydraulic presses in the United States that are capable of pressing aluminum. And so no matter how many aluminum extruding companies are, they all use the same 4 presses. They rent time on each other's machines. So pricing is very similar in the aluminum extrusion industry. And so it's important about getting multiple companies to price out your work so that you find somebody you're comfortable in working with. And when you go to manufacturers, it's important to get their feedback on your design. Hey, where do you see the hiccups in developing this? Because they may give you a price on it and then come back to you and say, look, we've tried running this and it doesn't seem like the part's going to be strong enough. And these are, you find new things. And so you really want to work with a manufacturer and and once you work with a manufacturer and you select them and you've given them a deposit, then you get samples. And you're never committed to your original design. All you've done by paying a deposit is reserve your place in line. And so it's okay. You don't have to be 100% done with your product. You just have to be close. And then when you get samples, you can play with those, and you don't have to pull the trigger right away. You can do more product testing. You can make sure it's going to work in its final design, and go from there.
So as you talk through that process, my interest is sparked on crowdfunding and some of the challenges of that process, especially when you have a product that's been crowdfunded, right? You got a big group of customers that have invested in your product and are patiently waiting for that process to kind of go through. Have you ever gone through that side of it where a pre-sale or that process was extra challenging?
Yeah, well, first of all, patiently might not be the appropriate word. Most people are very patient. I have learned that the crowdfunding, I guess I've never done specifically like Kickstarter. The way I crowdfund is I'll develop a product, I'll get it to the manufacturer, and then I'll start a pre-sale.
Yeah.
And I have learned my lesson on pre-sales to, with manufacturing, the only thing that is guaranteed is that it will be delayed. It just, you just can't do it on the timeline they say. And
especially the first time through, right?
Absolutely. It's new. The manufacturer's figuring it out. You're figuring it out. And manufacturers will tell you a timeline in the hopes of getting your business sometimes that won't be feasible, but you tell your customers that. And so I've learned to wait until, the manufacturer tells me it is on the assembly floor. We will be done in a week. And then I'll start going to pre-sale, because then when they tell you a week, it's going to be a month, and you can start working based on those timelines. And so one of the reasons that Kickstarter is extremely valuable, or crowdfunding is extremely valuable, is you can raise money to develop your idea if you don't have money. The drawbacks to that are you are promising to deliver, and people can be sort of impatient about delivery on those kind of things. And the thing that people not everybody realizes when they go into a pre-sale or a crowdfunding thing is they're not getting guaranteed a timeline. They're getting guaranteed a product and a deliverable, but things happen. And I would say that 95 to 98% of people are understanding of that. And from an emotional standpoint, as a person who wants to put the best product and the best tool in people's hands, is the 3% that aren't happy can really wear on your soul. Yeah. And so you really have to manage expectations, and it's important to update your customers regularly. When we are doing a pre-sale of a product, we really try to update customers regularly and say, here's where we are. And we acknowledge delays, and we acknowledge our mistakes. And hey, last week I said it would be 2 weeks, but you know what? We had a delay, and I'm sorry. That's my fault, and it's going to be an extra 2 weeks. But it's important to keep them updated. Otherwise, the influx of emails that you get almost becomes unmanageable. And so you need to manage expectations on a regular basis, which actually saves you your own time, because you don't have to answer emails. It takes us about 3 hours to answer 100 emails. And that's about what we get on a daily basis. We ship about 10,000 to 20,000 products a month. And that's a lot of people. And, there's inevitably problems. I always like to say, I can 100% guarantee that nobody is 100% perfect. And their mistakes happen. Packages get lost, occasionally, very occasionally. My business manager, Alex, is so incredible. He rarely makes a mistake, but occasionally, we leave a product out, or, we put the wrong size t-shirt in a box or something like that. It happens. And so got to fix those things. But it's important to manage expectations of your customers, and it's important to keep them updated, good or bad. Otherwise, you get into problems where people start canceling orders because you're not responding to them, and they don't know what's going on, and they feel like they might not ever get a product. And, people, for the most part, are very supportive and okay with the realities of a pre-sale, the realities of a Kickstarter. Yeah. And just the only thing that they're not tolerant of is lack of communication. So it's just important to keep people updated.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When I think about manufacturing, mistakes are inevitable to some level. And it's not if someone makes a mistake, but how they react to that mistake when it happens, and how you feel about that reaction, right? Like, because that's really, that's how we build trust. And when we talk about manufacturing, I think trust is a huge part of that relationship, whether it's with a vendor or with a customer. When you're in the middle of that chain, they are both partners in a sense, because they both require a lot of trust.
Yeah, I believe so firmly in integrity and trust. Like when we first released the stop block, I told you about the grooves that just didn't work. And, we produced almost 2,000 units before we realized it. And I was not willing to send those out. And so I ate a huge chunk of money on that because I wasn't willing to send my second best thing to 2,000 people, because they would never buy from me again. And once trust is the hardest thing to build and the easiest thing to lose. It's the reason I don't take sponsors on my channel that aren't people that I use day in and day out in my shop. In fact, I only have 3 sponsors, and I only have ever had a very limited run, and they're people I work with long term. I don't ever do one-off sponsorships because I don't want people to think of me as somebody who just takes money so I can make a couple bucks on a video. And I'm not saying that's wrong. We're in a unique position because we sell products that we don't need to do that. And for me personally, I work really hard to only put out things that are of the highest quality and the best value. And that's important to remember, that I could probably go on Alibaba, pick up, 30 different woodworking hand tools that you can get on Amazon too. I could undercut Amazon and sell those, but then I'm putting out subpar stuff that I'm not proud of. And I'm not willing to put my reputation on the line for 3 months of profits, only to destroy that when people start getting garbage in their inbox. And so, it's important to maintain the integrity and trust of your customers at all costs. And it's just whatever it costs, you do not give that up, and you do not take that for granted. Right. And so
integrity and authenticity in every aspect of your life, whether it's your business or just how you interact with folks on Instagram, it's so important. One thing I did want to mention, when you were talking about initially starting out and making connections to manufacturers, I think even the couple steps before then, making connections to folks who've done this before. One of the things that I realized is I really enjoy making connections between people that I can see, okay, this person has a lot of experience in this person over here, is really trying to learn about that. Maybe I think that would be a good fit. We started a digital fabrication meetup in Portland, which we haven't had a in-person meetup obviously in a little while, but at its peak, we would get 50 people together to take a tour of this shop that has, huge CNC machines, $1 million 3D printers. Somebody come up to me saying, I'm really interested in injection molding because I need to make this clip part for this product I want to design. And I have a friend over here who, he made, have you ever heard of the Yoga Joes? They're little army men that are doing yoga.
No.
I'll have to send you some because they're so cute. But, he has experience with manufacturing. And I think that's important. So no matter what you're trying to do or no matter what you're trying to learn, there's somebody out there who has a lot of experience in it and will be happy to help talk to you about it or, impart knowledge. That's a really great thing about the maker community is that we're open, it's not about, hiding and protecting all the specific skill sets of how you make something. It's what you do when you take those skill sets and what you make with it and the kind of community you can build around that.
I have never released something that didn't go into somebody else's hands first and get great constructive criticism. And it just, you cannot do it on your own because you get so single-minded. You go, I have an idea, I have a solution, it's the best solution that's ever been, it's great, it's perfect, and then somebody will just shoot a hole in it on day one and you're like, gosh darn it, you're totally right, that is absolute garbage, let's fix it. And so it's really important to get that feedback. It's things are made at their best with the most amount of people get a hand on them.
Yeah, and I guess if you're going to ask people for help, try to make it as easy for them to help you as possible. So if you're going to ask someone who to review your product, or, I mean, have the 3D models ready, have the PDFs ready, have a package ready to say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do or accomplish, and here's the information. Because if you can make it easy for someone to help you, the likelihood of them saying, hey, you know what, I can do this. I can take the amount of time to help you because you've made it a small amount of time. Where if you're vague and don't have the information, what you're saying is, hey, I need a big chunk of your time. And, you know, we're all juggling a calendar. And so for someone to commit to a big chunk can be really hard. So if you can make it easy for someone to help you, have the models, have the drawings, have the use case, whatever information you can share, I would say that's going to be the best bet to get that help.
Yeah, I get between 200 and 500 emails, messages, comments a day. I do my absolute best to respond to questions. I do my absolute best to, even if it's just liking a comment, you know, I try and give feedback because obviously my community is the most important to me. And so I do my absolute best to do that. But nothing is more frustrating for me when I'm trying to give my all to people and they say things like, hey, can I ask you a question? It's like, man, just ask your question. Like, I want to respond to as many people as possible. So, you know, give me all the information the first time. And it really goes for when you want feedback on a design. You know, whoever you're looking to has more experience than you. They may be extremely knowledgeable in the genre that you're working on. And so you want to just make it as easy for them to give you the most valuable feedback they can. And so, like you said, Corey, have all the information ready, deliver it to them on a silver platter, and give them some both my parents are in the chat. So I'm sure you'll get some embarrassing stories, but give them all the information that you can and allow them to give you their most valuable feedback in the shortest amount of time. And that's how you get great feedback from people who are better at whatever you're trying to do than you are. And it's important to surround yourself with those people. If you're the smartest guy in your group, then you're in the wrong group.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat here. How do you make sure your perception of value proposition goes in line with the customer and what the manufacturer is looking for?
I think we touched on that, but I think it's just important to say, like, you want to put your best foot forward, and you, like I said, for every product I've released, there's 10 that didn't get released, and it's because somewhere on that Venn diagram they didn't fit. Yeah. And it's like either it's too expensive and it won't sell, or it's a piece of junk and we can't make it do what we want it to do. And so it's about finding the ideas that are in the middle of that graph and how they intersect. And when you find those, it's like an unbelievable treat, because you're like, oh wow, this is exciting because this solves a problem. It's high quality, and I can sell it at a price that people will get value from it.
Yeah, you will find success when you find that balance, and I couldn't agree more. Right, because anyone can develop a system that's amazing and ridiculously expensive, and your market is going to be tiny. The people who will actually make that leap and partner with you is going to be a very, very small group. But when you can find that balance, I think that balance equals a huge amount of success. And like you said, sometimes it's 1 out of 10, it's 1 out of 20, it's 1 out of 30 to find that balance. It's really depending on how big your market is. I think determines how big that balance point is. And so the bigger the market, the easier it is to find balance. But yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Right. I mean, it's like the electric car example, right? They could make an electric car that gets you from California to New York on no charges, but it costs $2 million to make, and you couldn't sell it. So you have to find that happy place where things, a friend of mine invented the wireless headphone 10 years ago, and his girlfriend was a nurse, and she would work nights, and so he would always wake her up, when he was getting home from work, and vice versa. And so he developed this product that was a wireless headphone. It looks very much like the modern wireless headphones you see now. It had an alarm clock in it. It worked over, I believe it was Bluetooth, but it was just, they were $500 a piece to make. And so he abandoned the project. And now you get really high quality ones for $50. And it just back then, 10 years ago, the technology wasn't small enough to be able to make them for good value. And so, something that's a good idea today may not be a good product until tomorrow.
And your keychains are a perfect example of, timing with inventions is
Right.
such a big role in getting a wider balancing point is the timing of it.
Well, and if you want to talk about value proposition, here's two different ones. This one over here is a third of the price of this one. This one's much thicker. It has this pop-out thing to give you more holding power. But the value, it's too expensive for me to sell at a competitive price. And it doesn't do anything more than this one does. It's just fancier. And so you look at that happy medium and you find a great product for high value.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to change gears a little bit here and talk about some of the amazing videos you've made recently, specifically with, some of the footage from the Phantom. I think, I don't know, what do you know your current count on the hot dog video, your video showing the SawStop cartridge in action?
I think it's like 8.7 million views.
That's amazing. Fantastic job, man.
8,731,000.
That's fantastic.
Gosh, what a crazy thing. When we shot all those slow motion videos, thank you, Alex. We were hoping for something like that to happen. It was one of the most expensive things I've ever done. And so it was pretty nice that it happened, but we didn't, think like, oh, we're going to make viral videos. We just wanted to create videos that really hadn't been shown before. And I know that there was 10 years ago a slow motion time warp of the SawStop, but it didn't get it like we got it. We were able to get it in 2K resolution, which, the old time warp one was like 280p. And we were able to get a ton of angles. That was one of the cool things about being able to have that camera for 2 days, is we could set it up to get all these different angles, and the dado activation, the regular blade activations below and above the table. And we were able to do some tests. The thing that people always say is, oh, they never go fast enough in those demos. So we went as fast as we humanly could. We got to do a couple dado activations, which were incredible. And, moving that camera around, like, just to give you an example, those require so much light to be able to shoot that when I was standing there doing those activations, I was literally almost in pain from the heat of the lights. I was sweating profusely. And all of that equipment, I mean, we had 7 different tripods supporting different things for each shot. Yeah. So to do those under table activations, those shots took an hour to set up. But it paid off, and we were able to catch some footage that and use it for instructional content, which was the goal, to be able to really teach through showing. A lot of the theories that you teach in woodworking are really hard to show because they're done with machines that are spinning at 18,000 RPMs or 4,000 RPMs. You can't actually show what the theory is that you're teaching. But with this footage, we were able to show things that haven't been shown before. And I think one of the best ones was the spiral router bits video that we did on Your CNC. Being able to show why an upcut or a downcut or a compression bit is called that or what it does. It was so cool. And like just the shot of the straight bit, vibrating the wood almost off the machine versus the spiral bit taking a nice pass. And it was just incredible to be able to show those things.
I know. I immediately put all my straight bits in a box, and I was like, who wants these? Just kidding. No, but that it does really, because you can explain the concepts of it. We're working on our online CNC class, and I was putting a section together about router bit selection, and I made a video with the animation, which can kind of make everything else fall away rather than trying to shoot up close. But with your video, you were really able to get it where you could focus on only the important things, the concepts you're trying to explain, and you can just see the material flexing in space. It's not really perceptible by, just the naked eye without that. So it just can, help explain what is actually happening versus just the theory of hearing about it.
Right. In fact, I have a video coming out either this Sunday or next Sunday that's going to show some things with saw blades that have never been seen before that I'm so excited about. It's actually the one I think I've been most excited about. And it shows what a rip blade versus a crosscut blade versus a combination blade, what they do, why you want to use them for rip cutting, why you want to use them for cross cutting. One of the things we were able to capture that has never been caught on slow motion before is what the gullets of the saw blade do, and why they're so much bigger or smaller on a rip blade versus a crosscut blade. And the reason that is that in the past people have shot slow motion videos of saw blades, but the only way to show it is doing it on the side of material. And so there's no way to show what happens inside the material when it works, when there's something blocking the other side of the saw blade. And so day of the shoot, we were shooting it and I was like, man, I've seen this before. This isn't exciting to me. How could we capture it so that we can see what the saw blade looks like inside the wood? So we got a 2-inch thick piece of acrylic.
Yeah.
And we took a skim pass on the wood, just like a thou, and then we bumped the fence over a thou, and then we put the acrylic on there so that it just barely didn't touch the acrylic, but it still encapsulated the blade. Yes. And we were able to see exactly what was happening when we were able to demonstrate what it actually happens when the blade is encapsulated in the wood, which is why I'm so excited about this video coming out.
Yeah. I'm excited for it too, because often I say when we talk about creating tool paths or CAM with the CNC work, my focus is always on the chip. And you'll hear me say this over and over again, because I feel our machines create chips, and it's our job as programmers to set the machine up to create perfect chips for that material and that application, right? That's what toolpath creation is. It is asking the machine to create very specific chips. And when you can really embrace what you're saying right now with how are we creating those chips, where are they going, what is the material doing when it engages with our cutting tool, those to me are the foundational elements of becoming a phenomenal programmer to make these machines sing, not just cut, but make them sing, right? Make them create perfect parts in a very efficient time frame.
Right. I think that's actually something you've really been very good at teaching me that I didn't quite understand. And I certainly understood much better once we did the slow motion. But, I used to kind of guess at feeds and speeds and sort of go, okay, that sounds right. That looks right. But I didn't realize that there's a formula and that it's very calculable. Calculable? Yep. One of those two words.
Maths.
Formulaic.
Yeah. Well, and just to continue what I was saying, that was a joke at you, Sam.
Yeah.
The difference in cut quality, sound, heat, all of those things that you get when you have the proper chip load is astronomically different. It makes all the difference in the world. And we have a video coming out about that soon as well, about chip load. We're going to be testing the Astra coating on the Bits and Bits router bits. And we've got some cool thermometers, some infrared thermometers, some touch thermometers, and we're going to be doing a ton of stuff about feeds and speeds. And it's really important, and it matters in handheld routers. It matters in handheld in table saws. It matters on router tables, and it certainly matters on CNCs where it's the most controllable.
Right.
Most controllable, and you don't have that tactile feedback like you do with those other tools, where when you're pushing against it and when it's a higher density material, you can feel that the blade wants a thinner chip, right? You can feel it, right. So you push less hard. With the CNC, we don't have that feedback, and so we need to be more diligent about the calculation to allow the machine to do it. And then when we're diligent about it, that's when our results, as you said, are astronomically different. And, that is all about the toolpath creation.
Yeah. 100%. And it makes a big difference. It really, I didn't realize how much of a difference it made until you started teaching me that, Corey, and it's a big deal. It really is. And I didn't nobody, I mean, I guess nobody that I have used for instruction in the past has made that big a deal of it. And when you get into digital fabrication, it becomes something that you learn about, and it becomes a really important part of how you calculate everything.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have to stay tuned for a couple awesome videos coming out in the next few weeks here. And so everyone, be sure to go check out the links we have linked below. And thank you all so much for being here. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us. This was awesome. We'll have to have you back soon with all the new products, and I'll hear about how that's going.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you guys having me on. It was an absolute blast. And thank you for letting me spend an hour with you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you, Sammy.
Yeah, everyone stay safe, and thanks for being here. See you next week.
Stay safe in the shop.
Yeah. Have a good one, y'all.